Assassin's Creed 2, one of my personal favorites and one of the most beloved games in the Assassin's Creed franchise, is coming near its 15th year anniversary in November. Now, I have very fond memories of this game. I remember loving this game when I first played it, and I was curious, does it still hold up today, or am I looking back on the game with rose-tinted glasses on? So, in order to answer that question, I decided to replay the game in its entirety with the two DLCs and see if it held up still. And I have some interesting thoughts to share with you all about whether or not this game can still hit the heights that it did on its release. So today I want to really explore how well Assassin's Creed 2 has held up over almost 15 years. All right, so I wanted to give just a general spoiler warning for Assassin's Creed 2. I know, as I previously said, the game is coming upon its 15th year anniversary, so you likely will not care about the spoilers. But just for the people who don't want to have anything spoiled, this video is probably not for you. I won't be getting into the nitty-gritty of the story. However, I will be going over the broad strokes, I would say. So if you want to just avoid all that, maybe go play the game and then come back and see if you agree or disagree with my thoughts. But either way, there's your spoiler warning. So consider yourself warned. We are now getting into it. Let's go. All right, so I just want to set a baseline for the things I look at when determining how well a game has aged over the years. So I'm going to list 4 things that I look at, and I'm going to list them in order of importance to me personally. First is going to be gameplay. How well has the gameplay held up over the years? Does it still work? Does it feel dated? Does it feel sticky, heavy? What does it feel like? How the game feels, to me, is the most important part on determining how well it is aged. Number 2 is going to be the story or narrative or whatever you'd like to call it. I think that can also hold up really well over the years. And to me, I'm just not as story focused as I am gameplay focused, but I would say story is also incredibly important on how well a game is aged. Third, I'm going to be looking at the world building. So how well did how complete of a world did the developers create? Does the world make me want to inhabit it? And does it feel like it's moving even when I'm not there? Things like that are what I look for when determining how well a world was built within a game. And then fourth for me is going to be the visuals, because of course this is going to be the most glaring thing when determining age, because obviously if you play a game from 1995 compared to a game in 2024, of course the game in 2024 is most likely going to have better visuals. So I don't dock games too much on their visuals, because that's really a time period thing to me, and I don't want to be too harsh regarding that. So those are the 4 categories: gameplay, narrative, story, whatever you want to call it, world building, and then visuals. So those are the 4 things I look at, and the 4 things I did look at when determining how well Assassin's Creed 2 had aged. All right, so I'll be tackling the 4 categories I previously listed in reverse order, so from least important to most important. So starting with the visuals, I was pleasantly surprised at how well the visuals held up in Assassin's Creed 2. Now, I didn't play Assassin's Creed 2 in its original form. I played it through the Ezio collection on PS5, and even then, I was, like I said, very impressed. Of course, it's showing its age. There's some texture issues and some cookie cutter, copy and paste areas of the map that feel very similar to other areas. But for how old it is, it holds up very well. The lighting looks good. The cities of Florence, Venice, and Tuscany, the countryside, Monteriggioni, all those places look really good, for how old the game is. So I would say visually, the game has held up extremely well, and I was honestly surprised. I was expecting this to be its weakest category, which it was definitely not. its weakest category is coming up a little later. However, visually, I was very impressed with how well a game from 2009 or 2015 is when the Ezio collection came out, I believe. So even that, I was, like I said, pleasantly surprised with the visuals of Assassin's Creed 2. All right, so moving on to world building. When I think about world building in a game, my main question is, does the world feel alive? And what I mean by that question is, does it feel like the world is happening regardless of whether me as the player is in a specific location? Because I think some games can get into this weird area where it just feels like everyone's waiting for you to show up, and they're like, "Oh, okay, here you are. Now we're ready to walk around and do what we're doing." But the best games to me have a feeling that whether or not the player's there, the NPCs are just going about their daily life. So that's the thing I really look at. And when it came to Assassin's Creed 2, I was expecting to not feel as immersed in the world because it's so old. And the main reason I felt that way going into it is because it doesn't have a lot of side missions. Now, side missions aren't necessarily important in every game, but in an open world game, I feel like recently that has been what's drawn me into these games, is the side stuff, because it makes it feel like the world is constantly evolving and these people are living out their lives, and so I don't feel like they're all just waiting on me to show up as the player. So in Assassin's Creed 2, I was very pleasantly surprised because the lack of side missions did not take away from the world building at all. To me, it enhanced it. So when you would walk around the streets of Venice or Florence, there's constantly just groups of people walking around. And sure, they may be walking like very predictable paths, but I didn't really notice the pathing that much. They would just walk by, and if Ezio bumped into one of them or like ran through a crowd, they would react to that and say like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing?" Or, "Oh my God, I just need to get home. Don't hurt me." Things like that. Or if Ezio was, free running up a wall, they would look at him and be like, "Oh, he must be drunk," or, "Oh, she must be going to see a lady," or something. So all those things really added to the world building without adding bloat, which I was really excited about. Another thing is like the shopkeepers. When you pass them, they're always like trying to sell their wares to you and screaming out like, "Oh, good work for a good price," or, "You won't beat these prices anywhere," or anything like that. So that was awesome. I was very surprised that the world had held up so well, and they did a good job of making the cities feel distinct, but also very rich. So in Florence, you have the sun-baked roofs and the beautiful large cathedrals and everything that Florence has to offer. Great. You get to Venice, and each district feels like very distinct. You have the thieves district or guild or whatever you want to call it, and it feels very Wild West-ish. Like there's not a ton of guards in that area. It feels like, okay, we kind of control this. You get to the military district, and it's very austere and feels oppressive, and it's just like, oh, this is a dangerous place to be. But then you get to my personal favorite district, the Carnival district, and it's just a party. There's fireworks going off, there's performers everywhere, people are just having a good time, and it feels like no matter what district you're in, the other districts are also happening simultaneously, if that makes sense. So you may be in the military district, working on recruiting people, but it still feels like in the Carnival district, they're partying and having a good time. And that is a key sign to me of great world building. So I would say that Assassin's Creed 2 is definitely showing its age in regard to its world building because it doesn't have a lot of that side content that feels meaningful, but it's aging well, if that makes sense. So it's showing its age, but in a good way, because it took me back to earlier open world games of its time, and I remembered, oh yeah, that's how these games would make the world feel full and lived in and really immerse the player without throwing ridiculous amounts of side missions that don't add anything to the world. So again, I was pleasantly surprised with the world building. It does show its age, but I would say it aged like a fine wine, if you will. right, so the story of Assassin's Creed 2, or as I like to call it, Ezio's revenge tour around Renaissance Italy, held up extremely well. And I really had no concerns about this going in. From what I remembered, was that this was just a classic coming of age revenge tale, and I pretty much knew that it was not going to feel dated or feel bad at this juncture. But I just want to give a disclaimer. I'm not going to be going over any of the present day events. I really just don't care about them, if I'm being honest. I don't care about Desmond. I don't care about Abstergo. I don't care about any of that. So I won't be getting into that. I also won't be getting into really like the Apple of Eden or the staff. I know those are important to the story, but to me, those are more important to the overall Assassin story. And I really just want to focus on Ezio's journey in this particular game. So the game begins with Ezio in Florence, and he's just a normal teenager. He's having a good time. He's doing chores for his dad. He's racing his brother up towers and jumping off them. He's helping his other brother find some feathers around the place that he likes to collect. He's beating up his sister's ex who was cheating on her. He's helping his mom run errands to none other than Leonardo da Vinci, which I always like when they do that. They add historical figures to the game that are either allies or adversaries and really flesh them out. I think that's a super cool touch. But his perfect, idyllic world is quickly shattered with the assassination of his father and his brothers. And I remember playing this game initially when it came out in 2009, thinking, I'm going to save him. Like when you see them up on the executioner's block or whatever you'd like to call that, the stage, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm the main character. Of course I'm going to knock all these guards down and just go save my family. And I guess, spoiler alert, that does not happen. They're all killed on the executioner's block. That feeling of helplessness was something I didn't think I could feel again, just because I knew it was going to happen. So I didn't have the hope of like, I'm going to save him this time, because I was like, well, I know they're going to die. But I still felt the hopelessness that I imagine Ezio also felt, because you come into it thinking, I'm the main character, I'm going to take care of business here and save everyone, and it just doesn't happen. And that plot device shows how weak Ezio really is at the start of the game. He's not a master assassin. He's not even a fighter, really. Sure, he's beat up some people in the streets, but this is a different type of challenge, and he's not ready to face it. And so by showing that Ezio can't save his family, it shows how weak he really is. And initially, he is thinking like, I just need to get out of here. I got to get out of Italy or they're going to kill the rest of my family. So he escapes to the countryside with his Uncle Mario, or to meet his Uncle Mario. And his thought is like, hey, just give me some money and we'll just get out of here. And his uncle's like, no. Like, we're a family of assassins. You can do this. Let me train you and help you not only learn how to be an assassin and what it means to be an assassin, but also avenge your family and take out these conspirators that, conspired, for lack of a better word, to murder them. So he starts out there and he moves back into Florence to really take out the Templars and conspirators that are there. And then he moves to Venice and does the same thing. But what I really found interesting is that the allies he meets along the way, it feels like a very symbiotic relationship. So it feels like Ezio may be learning something from them and they're kind of scratching his back in this way, but he's helping them by freeing their districts in the city. And the districts that he frees really feel better as a player after, walking around, you're just like, oh, there's not this big bad guy they're all talking about because I've taken him out. The conspirator is gone. So as he progresses through that, he is continually picking up more skills from these allies while also aiding the allies in their pursuits in their certain areas of the cities they're in. And then the big reveal comes at the end when he's taken out all the other conspirators Ezio has, and he's working his way up to take out Rodrigo Borgia, the Spaniard. The big reveal comes at the end, well, near the end of the game, when they determine like, hey, we're actually all assassins. We've been helping you this whole time become better at what we do. So that was a really nice touch, and it was nice to see Ezio's progression over the 10 years, not only in his ability as an assassin, but also his maturation. Because early, when he's taking out the conspirators, he's very angry and, he's taking his frustration out on them. But as he gets older and has to take out more and more of these conspirators, it just feels like, hey, I'm doing this job. I have to do this job because you are bad for this country and the people I care about. So I have to take you out. But it didn't feel like Ezio was taking pleasure in these kills near the end. And he even allows Rodrigo Borgia to escape, because after the big fight at the end, he's just like, well, this is not gonna mean anything if I kill you now, so I'm just gonna let you go. Which turns out to maybe be a mistake. I think so. I don't know. That's up for debate. But either way, his growth across the game, like I said, the game takes place over 12 years. So his growth as a person as well as an assassin was really cool to see, and just culminates at the end of the game. Now, one place I didn't feel great about anymore was the dialogue. Now, I don't know. Sometimes the dialogue just felt like very cartoonish, or like what you would imagine a caricature of an Italian person would say.
It's a me, Mario!
Like, I kept waiting on one of them to be like, oh, hey, where's the gabagoo? Stuff like that. It just, I don't know. It showed its age a lot with the dialogue, but it wasn't enough to take me out of the immersion. So overall, the base game story, very good. And like I said, did not show its age hardly at all, except for the little dialogue issues. Now, the DLC was something I actually hadn't played before. So there's 2 DLCs, the Battle of Forli, and there's one in Florence where you're kind of like cleaning up some conspirators there. And the Battle of Forli was really fun. I enjoyed it. You're helping out Caterina da Forza. The one in Florence was kind of I didn't really like it as much. You're just running around assassinating 9 lieutenants or captains or whatever you want to call them. I didn't find that one to be terribly inspiring, but the Battle of Forli was a good addition to the game. I appreciated that. So overall, I would say narratively, this game holds up extremely well and is worth your time in 2024 if you have never played this game before. Now, moving on to the gameplay of Assassin's Creed 2, this is unfortunately where the game shows its age the most, which sucks because this is the most important category in my opinion, and it's its weakest category on a replay, nearly 15 years later. Now, I'm going to break gameplay up into 2 different things. Obviously, combat is going to be one of those, but the second thing is going to be free running / stealth. That's going to be the second aspect of the gameplay that I found to be one of the key systems in the game, but also one of the worst. So to break down combat, there's essentially 2 scenarios that the player will encounter when in combat. There's what I like to call the damage sponge encounter, and then the dodge / counter enemies. So the damage sponge, what essentially will happen, there's some enemies who all Ezio has to do to defeat them is hit them like 10 times, I would say. And as soon as you start hitting them, they don't react. But Ezio is essentially doing the same attack. It's an overhead or a slash like over and over and over. So it doesn't feel very fluid. It feels disjointed and I don't know, it just doesn't feel good. So you hit them a bunch of times and you finally whittle their health bar down, and then you have defeated that enemy. The second scenario that comes into play are what I like to call the dodge / counter enemies. So these enemies you can't attack initially, but what you have to do is for some of them you counter them until their health bar's down, and the other ones you dodge and then attack them again until their health bar's down. This suffers from the same issue that the damage sponge enemies suffer from. It's repetitive, it's disjointed, it doesn't feel very fluid. So what you'll essentially have to do in scenario 2 is wait for the enemies as they stand in a line essentially and attack you. And it just, like I said, it doesn't feel good, and I don't enjoy the combat part, which is pretty sad because that is a large portion of the game. I mean, it's an action and adventure game. Of course, combat is going to be at the key or at the core, and the core is just rotten here, unfortunately. Now, the last fight in the game with Rodrigo Borgia is potentially the worst ending fight of a video game that I've ever played. Now, the reason it's so bad is because Rodrigo Borgia is essentially a damage sponge. So you can really pin him in and knock him into a corner and just keep hitting him and hitting him and hitting him. And it just, it feels awful. Like, he's a damage sponge. He takes about 500 hits to finish, and it's not hard. The difficulty is not what makes it annoying. It's just repetitive. It doesn't feel like he's worth the game, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is Rodrigo Borgia has been made out to be this incredible big bad of the whole game, and you finally get to fight him at the end for like all the marbles, and all you do is just hit him 500 times, and he'll attack here and there, but you just block it and counter it, but he'll stop the counter, so then you have to like really press him, and it just feels gross. Honestly, it feels disjointed. I don't like it at all. So the combat has aged not like wine. I would say it's aged like absolute milk, 2%. So the combat is just bad in my opinion. I don't know how they could have improved it for the last boss, just to touch on that one more time, because the system is just bad. So I don't think they can rework the entire system for the last boss. So that is frustrating. And I don't want to pile on Ubisoft too much for this particular thing. I mean, there's plenty of other things you can pile on Ubisoft for, but in this specific instance, the combat has gotten better in future iterations of Assassin's Creed. So I don't think that this was a mistake they continue to make. It's just unfortunate that this game, they missed the mark a lot. And I don't know, when I think back to it in 2009 when I played it, it felt okay, but I never thought the combat was just amazing. However, now with 15 years of gaming experience added to that, it doesn't feel very good, and that's not necessarily Ubisoft's fault at the time. However, it hasn't aged very well in this category. Now, the free running, if you will, is how do I put this? Just as annoying as you remember it in 2009. I can remember playing Assassin's Creed 2 in 2009, and the free running felt bad then. It didn't feel very responsive. So I remember I would have the camera pointed in the right direction. I would press X. Ezio would jump in the wrong direction. And it doesn't feel like a skill issue thing. It feels like a system issue where Ezio should be jumping where I'm pointing and where the camera is pointed, but he's not. And so it leads to a lot of falling for no reason, getting spotted by guards. There's a couple assassin tombs where you have to like race to beat the clock. I'm pretty sure that's almost all the assassin's tombs. It's like a free running race essentially, and it is so annoying when the time is running out and it's just ticking down and Ezio is jumping the wrong way. So again, this is a lot like the combat system. It is not aged well at all. However, they have improved the free running system over time, so I don't want to hold their feet to the fire about this too much, but it hasn't aged very well. Then the stealth, the reason the stealth isn't great in this game is because, number one, there's not a lot of it. I thought I remembered a lot more stealth sections in this game, but there's really not. I mean, most of the missions can be completed by just going in loud and taking out the guards. There are a few missions where you'll be desynchronized if you are spotted, but for the most part, it just doesn't really exist a whole lot in the game. And the stealth scenarios in and of themselves aren't bad scenarios, but when you mix that with the gameplay of the free running, it makes it an unenjoyable experience, because a lot of times there will be a guard or a target, in one area, and you have to like methodically pick off the guards all around it, or I think that's what they wanted you to do. And you can't sometimes it feels like you can't get into a position where you can assassinate them and not be seen. And that comes down to the free running, because a lot of times I would be able to see, like, okay, if I could just get to this little platform, I would be able to do what I'm trying to do. However, there's no way to get there. I can remember one time I was hanging off a ledge, and the guy that I needed to take out was below me, but he was probably like 5 feet under the ledge. And so it just doesn't feel good, because instead of dropping down and assassinating him and completing the mission, I had to rework my entire strategy and go to a different location to do that. And the stealth, like I said, the stealth scenarios are fine, but how the player's forced to complete them is not fun in my opinion. So there will be some times where you dive into a hay bale, and anyone who's played Assassin's Creed knows that when you dive into the hay bale, what you do is wait for someone to walk by, and then you take the guard out and pull them into the hay bale. So you're taking them out and also hiding the body, so you're all good. But there will be a lot of times in Assassin's Creed 2 when Ezio will dive into the hay bale, and I can clearly tell which guard I'm supposed to be pulling into the hay bale, but the guard never comes close enough. So I can't pull them in, and it just ruins the whole stealth scenario. So there were a lot of times when I would have to like stealth an enemy or whatever, stealth kill an enemy. I would just find a way where I could jump down in the middle of all of them and take them out before the little meter on the guard filled up to like know that I'd been that I was now notorious instead of anonymous. And that feels terrible, because that's not the point of this game. It doesn't make you feel like a master assassin who is getting better at his craft, or whatever you'd like to call it. It just feels like, okay, well, let's blunder our way through this and get the big bad taken out. So on the whole, the gameplay of Assassin's Creed 2 was, it hasn't aged well. It's aged incredibly poorly, and I hate that, because since gameplay is such a big part of what I look at when I am judging if a game is aged well or not, this was going to knock Assassin's Creed down a lot of points. Now, I'm not going to give it like a 72 or like anything on a scale of 1 to 100. I just mean, in general, the gameplay being as frustrating and repetitive and unenjoyable as it was, the best way I can put it is, the longer I played Assassin's Creed 2, the more annoyed I got with Assassin's Creed 2. Because initially, you know, some of these systems feel like nostalgia based. You're like, oh, it's so bad, it's good, you know, but the longer you play it, the more annoying it gets. So the fact that gameplay is so important and hasn't aged very well in this particular game, it makes me feel like I was looking at this game with the rosiest of tinted glasses on. So on the whole, gameplay it just hasn't aged well, and that's about all I can say about the gameplay for Assassin's Creed 2. Okay, so in closing about how well Assassin's Creed 2 has aged, I know it hasn't aged well in the gameplay category, which, as I said, is the most important category, but the main question I always ask when determining how well a game is aged is it still worth a replay or even a first-time playthrough in 2024? And I would say Assassin's Creed 2 definitely is worth a first-time playthrough or even a replay if you are a specific type of gamer. Now, what I mean by specific type of gamer is if you're somebody who is really focused on narrative and wants to experience a classic revenge / coming of age tale, this will be for you. I think, you know, you'll enjoy your time with it. If you're not too worried about gameplay, I think you'll have a great time with Assassin's Creed 2, because like I said, its narrative still holds up. If you're kind of a gameplay Andy, if you will, I don't think you're going to have as good of a time with this game, because like I said, it gets more annoying the more you play it. So just in closing, it'll depend on what kind of gamer you are if this game is still for you. I think on the whole, the game has aged pretty well. It just, unfortunately, the most important category is its weakest, which would be the gameplay. But like I said, check it out and let me know what you think. If you played the game in the past, please, let me know if you played it recently, what you think on it, or Are you somebody who's never played it and is going to pick it up now? Just let me know, because I would be really interested to hear your guys' thoughts on everything. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for watching today. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to be doing some more of these. How well did it age for some other kind of games? I'm not going to just stay in Assassin's Creed. I'm going to definitely branch out into some more action adventure games, which also brings me to my next point. If you're interested in what game I'm playing currently, the best place to find that is going to be on Twitch, which my Twitch channel will be linked in the description down below. So give me a follow there. I stream on Tuesday, Thursday afternoons from around 4 to 6 Eastern time. And then Saturday mornings, I usually will stream from around 9:30 a.m. Eastern time until 1 or 2 Eastern time in the afternoon. So a longer stream on Saturday. But yeah, I usually will stream action adventure games. So if you want to watch those, come check me out on Twitch. Maybe get some insight for some future videos that I'll be making. Also, if you did enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. That would be awesome. Help grow the channel, help more people see these videos, which I would really appreciate. And then lastly, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram so you'll never miss any new uploads or anytime I go live, you'll be able to see it. So yeah, I appreciate you all watching so much. If you did enjoy the video, in closing, please tell a friend. That would be amazing, and I would really appreciate it. So thanks again, and I hope you all have a beautiful time, and I will see you in the next one.